Hello, so I'm going to attempt to tell you guys my birth story with surrogate twin boys. I'm going to try and remember every detail as best as I can, and hopefully this video won't be too long. I may have to make it in two parts. I'm not really sure yet, but if birth or blood grosses you out, you may not want to watch this video. Okay, so there's my warning. If those sorts of things gross you out, you probably don't want to watch this because I'm going to go into as much detail as I feel like is appropriate. So, okay, so basically, I had a doctor appointment that previous Friday. I went to labor on Sunday, but I had a doctor appointment that previous Friday and been given a clean bill of health. The doctor checked me for dilation. I was not dilated at all at that time. I had an NST, which came out perfect. I had a ultrasound to check the baby's fluid levels, and that came out perfect. Everything was perfect, and the doctor sent me home, and I reluctantly scheduled a C-section for 38 weeks because baby B was still breech, and that's what my doctor recommended. So that's what I did. I scheduled the C-section for February 10th, which actually is today. If I was still pregnant, I would be in the hospital right now and have just given birth. Let me see here, this thing. So yeah, that Friday I had my doctor appointment, and then on Sunday I started to have contractions, but they were mild enough where I didn't think it was real. I really thought it was just prodromal labor because a lot of times in twin pregnancies, when your uterus is so overextended, you can get contractions for days or weeks at a time that is just false labor. And I had been into labor and delivery before a couple of times and been sent home, which is just not fun at all, to drive down to La Jolla and go to labor and delivery and be poked and prodded and tortured for, 6 hours and then get sent home because it's not real. So I thoroughly did not want that to happen again. So I was fairly certain that these contractions were just false labor or prodromal labor because they were not intense enough to convince me that they were real. So we went around about our normal day on Sunday. We went to church, and then we went and had lunch at Pit Stop and put the kids down for naps. And, I was, having these contractions pretty much all day. I mean, I don't know how far apart they were or whatever, but they were annoying and painful, but they weren't intense enough to make me think that they were real. So yeah, we went about our normal day. We put the kids down for naps. Then when they woke up, we went and had dinner at my mom's house, as we often do on Sundays, and got back home, put them to bed. And, as I was getting ready to go to bed, I was still having contractions, and I remember leaning over my bed to alleviate the pressure on my back because I was having some back pain with the contractions. And so yeah, I was trying to settle down and get to sleep. I decided before I fell asleep I was going to get up and go to the bathroom one more time. So I got up and went to the bathroom, and as I was sitting on the toilet, my water broke. It was just the weirdest feeling, this gush and pop, and just, it was very obvious that my water had broken. But I looked down in the toilet and it was full of blood, which I didn't think was normal because I had had my water break before with James, and it was, clear fluid. It's supposed to be clear. And I thought, okay, this is weird. Why am I gushing blood? It seems like that was concerning to me at that point, but I wasn't really sure. So, I called Jeff in. I said, Jeff, I'm pretty sure my water just broke. Here's my phone, and I need you to call the doctor and ask them, what we're supposed to do, like to see if this is anything to worry about or whatever. And so, But, you know, we knew at that point we were going to have to go to the hospital, that these babies were going to be born that night. I was 36 weeks and 1 day pregnant at the time. And so he's on the phone with the doctor, and they're sort of leading us to believe that it's not a big deal, that we shouldn't be worried about the blood. But, you know, I went to go flush the toilet, and I sat down again, and I just kept gushing this fluid and looked down the toilet again, and it was just full of blood, and it still was concerning me a lot. And so Jeff was on the phone with the doctor, and they said, okay, we'll come to Encinitas instead of La Jolla. You know, that'll be closer. We'll tell them you're coming and everything like that. So I proceeded to try and stand up so that I could, you know, try and get some pants on and some shoes on and get in the car to drive down to the hospital. Somewhere in the mix, we'd already called my mom. She was on her way to drive to the hospital with us, and she's bringing Ashley so she could stay and watch the kids for us. So yeah, as I tried to stand up, I just kept gushing more fluid, and, you know, by the time I was standing just in a puddle of blood. And, oh yeah, and I hadn't mentioned, after my water broke, the contractions got way more intense, like way more painful. They weren't super close together. They were only lasting about 30 to 45 seconds, but they were incredibly intense. Like, got my attention. This is real labor, painful contractions. So I'm standing there and standing in a puddle of blood, you know, holding on to one hand onto the countertop of the bathroom and the other hand onto, like, the towel rack, just standing there, contracting, standing in a puddle of blood. So at this point, I was beyond sure that this amount of blood loss was not normal. This was not right. There was something wrong. Where was all this blood coming from? So I told Jeff he should call 911, that we needed an ambulance to come get me out. There was just too much blood loss, and I was worried about the babies, and there was just something clearly wrong. I felt it, you know, just my mother's intuition. There was something not right. So he was calling 911, and so when everything happened so fast, I almost forgot to call the baby's parents. So here I am, standing in a puddle in the bathroom, on my phone, trying to call the baby's mother and tell her what's happening. You know, so I called her up. She answered. I told her, you know, my water broke. I'm painfully contracting. I'm losing a lot of blood. We're calling 911, and obviously, she must have not really been able to grasp the urgency of the situation, because one of the first things that she says to me is, tell the paramedics to take you to La Jolla. So what was still first on her mind was not, you know, get to the nearest hospital, do whatever you have to do to make sure that my babies are safe. She says, tell the paramedics to go to La Jolla, which, yeah, obviously she did not understand that it was so terribly urgent. So yeah, and what I told her, you know, that would be up to the paramedics to decide after they evaluated me, where I needed to go based on what they thought, if the babies were in danger or not. So yeah, the paramedics got there. My mom got there to our house, and I had to tiptoe through the carpeted hallway and climb onto the gurney. I was actually naked from the waist down. So it's a little embarrassing, you know, there's all these paramedics around, but, you know, I thought that thought for maybe a split second, and then it didn't matter anymore because I was in extreme pain and they were there to help me and make sure that the babies and I ended up safe. So, a little awkward. I remember tiptoeing through the carpeted hallway and just hoping I didn't get blood on the carpet, and I didn't, which was good. So yeah, climbed onto the gurney. The paramedics, you know, told me to tell them when I was contracting, so I tried to tell them whenever I was beginning and ending a contraction, and they got me into the ambulance and got me hooked up with an IV, and I could hear my mom's voice talking to the driver. Apparently she rode up in the passenger seat next to the driver. She rode in the ambulance to go to the hospital with me, and I think the plan was they were going to take me over to Tri-City to get evaluated, and if it wasn't urgent, then they would send me to La Jolla. But once I got to Tri-City, well, the whole ambulance ride was just sort of a blur. And then when I got to the hospital, you know, they're driving the gurney through the cold, bright hospital, and I was just, you know, screaming through some pretty intense contractions and just, you know, what everyone else in that hospital must have thought. I don't know, but it was crazy. And then they got me to wherever the ER or wherever I was supposed to be, and the ER OB evaluated me. She asked me, like, how far along I was, what positions the babies were last in, and, you know, I told her that, you know, that baby A was head down and baby B was, like, you know, breech transverse the last time that I had an appointment. And so she checked me for dilation, and I was already 8 centimeters dilated, which is crazy. Like, it's the fastest labor ever. I was already 8 centimeters. Still losing a lot of blood. And then she did a quick ultrasound to check baby B's position, and he was still breech transverse. And also, interesting fact, Tri-City does not do VBACs. And under the circumstances of all the blood loss I was having, I was worried, and I'm like, she's like, okay, we need to do a C-section. So I'm like, okay, let's do it, you know? I don't know where all this blood is coming from. Let's get these babies out and make sure that they're safe and everything like that. So, they had me sign all the consent forms and, you know, wheeled me over to the OR, and, Jeff got all suited up with, you know, all the gear you have to get suited up with so he could be with me during the C-section. Of course, you know, they kick you out. They kicked him out while they were prepping me, and I remember just sitting there on the table, just contracting, and just, you know, the nurse that was standing in front of me just squeezing her arms and holding on to her. I mean, just, it was very traumatic, and I was very, very emotional, and while they were trying to get my spinal in, but once my spinal was in, I mean, it kicked in like right away. My legs and my feet started getting numb, and then eventually I couldn't, it took mere seconds or maybe like a minute before I couldn't feel any contractions anymore at all, so that was good, and I began to be able to relax a little bit. Then they let Jeff in, and he was able to come and stand by me and hold my hand and everything. And I remember asking him, have they started yet? And he said, yeah, they've started. Because you can smell that nasty, anyone that's had a C-section before, that nasty, like, you know, burning smell. I started smelling that, and that was not fun, and started feeling nauseous, and I just made sure to let everyone know how I was feeling. I told the anesthesiologist, you know, I'm feeling nauseous, and I think she gave me she or he, I don't even remember, gave me some Zofran or something, and I started to feel a little bit better. Yeah, then baby A came out, and he was, and as soon as they opened me up, she's like, oh, we have a placental abruption, and so then at that point we knew, you know, what the source of all the bleeding was the placental abruption, which was crazy, you know, where the placenta starts to prematurely separate from your uterus. So really, you know, we really did need the C-section, because if we waited too long, we didn't know how much time we actually had before the placenta would have been completely separated, and then, you know, that supplies oxygen to the baby, and then the baby can't breathe. So it was an emergency C-section. So yeah, baby A came out, and I'm pretty sure he was crying pretty much straight away. But they had to suction. He had blood. He was spitting up blood, and he had blood in his stool. So the doctor said that it must have been rupturing for at least a day or two, because it had gotten all the way through his little system. So yeah, it was pretty crazy, pretty scary. But yeah, he appeared to be fine. He was crying, and then baby B was delivered, and it took him, you know, they had to work on him a little bit with section and whatnot before he started making noise. But they were both healthy. Baby A was 6 pounds 4 ounces, and baby B, little stubborn breech baby B, was 5 pounds. And since they were fraternal twins, they had like their own, own placentas and own bag of waters and everything like that. So even though baby A had swallowed a lot of blood, that didn't affect baby B at all, because, he had his own little environment in there. But yeah, it was just crazy. And that anyone that's had a C-section before, I mean, that awkward pulling and tugging and numbness, and like, even though you're not in pain, it's not comfortable, and you feel like you can't breathe. It was just not fun for a while until they were done sort of messing with me. I'm not sure what they have to do exactly to make sure that the placentas detach and all of that. I'm not sure how exactly that goes, when you're having a C-section. But eventually, once I was comfortable, once they were done torturing me, so to speak, and they were sewing me up, I was so tired, because they were born just after midnight, and so, normally I would have been in bed sleeping. So I remember lying there on the table and just, almost falling asleep. And oh yeah, and then I asked Jeff, if the babies looked good, and he said yeah, that they looked good, and he was sort of, trying to fill me in on what was going on, and he got over and took a few pictures of them, and after he was sure I was okay, and they were sewing me up and whatnot, when they took the babies out to the NICU, they showed them to me for a couple of split seconds, and I got to just look at their little faces and whatnot. And then Jeff went with the babies to the NICU, so he got to see when the babies' parents got there. He got to see that their initial like reactions and everything like that. I really wanted to be there to see that, but the way everything worked out, I mean, it was an emergency, so it really couldn't have been helped. But yeah, I mean, it all went well. Babies are healthy, and the doctor said that the ER doctor that did my C-section said that I have no scar tissue on my uterus from my previous C-section with Raquel, and that my ovaries and my fallopian tubes, that everything looked great. She said I need to wait a year before getting pregnant again, but that I should have no problem, getting pregnant and carrying another pregnancy and all that. So that was really good. But yeah, I mean, the recovery has been really hard because it's a repeat C-section. But I mean, all in all, it couldn't have gone better under the circumstances. So those babies were ready to come out. I was so huge and so miserable, and the parents were just, the relationship with the parents was not good. They were putting me through a lot of emotional stress. So I am very, very thankful that it worked out the way that it did. Even though it was an emergency, it could not have had a better outcome for the babies or for me. So, yeah. I'm not sure what else to include in this. If you have any questions, let me know. That was my crazy traumatic birth story with surrogate twins. Hopefully my next birth will be just a lot more peaceful and calm, and I'm looking forward to having a healing birth when Jeff and I decide to have baby number 3. I am planning on waiting the full year, though. I really need my body to heal and everything so that I can have a healthy, successful pregnancy again with our baby. So yeah, that's pretty much it. And this video is almost 20 minutes long, so I had better stop. Bye.